The courthouse in Riverside, Colorado, had seen better days. Paint peeled from its walls, and the October wind rattled its old windows. Inside Courtroom 3, Judge Harold Brennan sat behind his bench like a king on his throne, looking down at the woman before him with barely concealed annoyance. Major Catherine Kate Rodriguez stood straight in her simple civilian clothes, a plain black suit that had seen too many wears, practical shoes, and her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. At 48 years old, she looked tired but unbroken. Her hands were steady as she held a folder of documents, even though her entire future depended on what happened in the next hour. "So, Ms. Rodriguez," Judge Brennan said, deliberately not using her military title, "you're here requesting the court overturn the VA's decision regarding your disability benefits. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor. The VA has denied my claim for—" "I can read, Ms. Rodriguez," the judge interrupted, flipping through papers with theatrical boredom. "Says here you're claiming PTSD and physical disabilities from your service. 22 years in the Army, and now you want taxpayers to pay for your retirement." Kate's jaw tightened, but her voice remained level. "Your Honor, I have extensive medical documentation showing—" "I see your medical records," Brennan cut her off again. He was a heavy man in his 60s with thick jowls and small eyes that seemed to find everything amusing. "I also see your service record, Supply Corps mostly, pushing papers and counting boxes. Not exactly frontline heroics, was it?" The small gallery behind Kate shifted uncomfortably. A few veterans had come to support her, along with her teenage daughter, Elena. Kate could feel their anger, but she kept her focus on the judge. "Your Honor, my service record has been partially redacted for security reasons. If you look at page—" Brennan actually laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that echoed in the small courtroom. "Security reasons? For a supply officer? What were you doing guarding secret recipes in the mess hall?" The court reporter, an older woman named Mrs. Patterson, stopped typing and looked up in shock. Even she could feel the disrespect dripping from the judge's words. Kate took a deep breath. "Your Honor, I served in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and—" Yes, I see the list of places," Brennan waved dismissively. "Probably never left the base in any of them. Look, Ms. Rodriguez, I see dozens of these cases every month. Veterans looking for handouts, exaggerating their service to get a monthly check. PTSD from what? Paperwork stress." "Your Honor," Kate's court-appointed lawyer, a young man named David Park, tried to interject. "Major Rodriguez has 3 bronze stars and a Purple Heart. Surely that indicates—" Brennan laughed again. "They give those out like candy nowadays, participation trophies. Everyone gets a medal for showing up." He looked directly at Kate. "Tell me, Ms. Rodriguez, did you ever actually see combat? Ever fire a weapon in anger? Ever do anything more dangerous than inventory supplies?" Kate's hands gripped the folder tighter. There was so much she couldn't say, so much that was still classified. The missions that didn't officially exist. The enemies she'd eliminated who were never reported dead. The operations that saved hundreds of American lives but could never be acknowledged. "I served where I was ordered to serve, Your Honor," she said simply. "How noble," Brennan said sarcastically. "And now you claim you can't work because of nightmares and a bad back. Do you know how many real wounded warriors I see? Men who lost limbs, who fought in actual battles." "Judge Brennan," David Park stood up, his young face flushed with anger. "This is highly inappropriate. Major Rodriguez's service." "Counselor, I'll decide what's appropriate in my courtroom," Brennan snapped. "And I'm looking at what appears to be a career paper pusher trying to milk the system. These documents," he held up her service record, "are so full of redactions they're practically useless. Black lines everywhere. For all I know, those are covering up disciplinary actions." Kate felt Elena's hand touch her shoulder from behind. Her daughter had wanted to come to support her mother. Kate wished she hadn't. No child should see their parent humiliated like this. "Your Honor," Kate said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Those redactions are there because—" "Because you want to seem more important than you were," Brennan finished. "I've seen this game before. Claim everything's classified, make yourself sound mysterious and important. But at the end of the day, you were Supply Corps, a logistics officer, not special forces, not infantry, not even artillery." He shuffled more papers, smirking. "Says here you were stationed at Fort Campbell for 3 years. Home of the 101st Airborne. What did you do there? Make sure the real soldiers had enough toilet paper." Someone in the gallery gasped. It might have been Elena. I did my duty, sir, Kate said quietly. Your duty? Brennan repeated mockingly. Well, your duty to the taxpayers now is to get a regular job like everyone else instead of trying to live off government benefits. This whole claim reads like fiction. PTSD from supply runs? Please. David Park was on his feet again. Your Honor, I must object to this treatment of my client. She served 22 years. And was well paid for it, Brennan interrupted. Military salary, housing allowance, food allowance, medical care. Now she wants more, always more. He looked at Kate with disgust. You know what your problem is? You think wearing a uniform for a few years makes you special, makes you entitled. Well, it doesn't. The judge picked up a specific document, reading with exaggerated drama. Oh, this is rich. Listen to this, folks. Ms. Rodriguez claims she was involved in, quote, classified operations resulting in severe physical and psychological trauma. But conveniently, she can't provide any details because it's all secret. He tossed the paper down. How convenient. The dog ate my homework, military edition. Kate remained at attention, her military bearing the only armor she had left. Behind her, she could hear Alina crying softly. Her daughter had never seen her mother treated this way. Kate had survived torture in enemy hands, but this public humiliation in front of her child was worse. I've made my decision, Brennan announced, not even pretending to deliberate. The VA's denial of benefits is upheld. Ms. Rodriguez has failed to provide convincing evidence of service-connected disabilities. Being a supply clerk, no matter where you're stationed, doesn't qualify you for. The courtroom door burst open with such force it slammed against the wall. Everyone turned. In the doorway stood General Marcus Hayes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. 4 stars gleamed on each shoulder. His uniform was immaculate, his presence commanding. Behind him stood 2 full-bird colonels and a command sergeant major, all in dress uniforms. But what made the entire courtroom freeze wasn't his rank or his entrance. It was the fact that General Hayes, the highest-ranking officer in the United States military, walked directly to Kate Rodriguez and saluted her first. Kate's eyes widened in shock. She automatically returned the salute, muscle memory taking over. Major, General Hayes said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. I apologize for being late. Traffic from the Pentagon was worse than expected. Judge Brennan's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. General, Hayes, what? What are you doing in my courtroom? Hayes turned to the judge, his expression cold enough to freeze water. I'm here to testify on behalf of Major Rodriguez. I understand there's some confusion about her service record. Testify, Brennan stammered. You weren't on the witness list. This is highly irregular. So is mocking a decorated war hero, Your Honor, Hayes said flatly. But here we are. The general turned to his aide. Colonel Mitchell, please provide Judge Brennan with the classified testimony authorization signed by the Secretary of Defense and the President. Colonel Mitchell stepped forward, handing a sealed envelope to the stunned judge. Brennan's hands shook as he opened it. This is... Brennan couldn't finish his sentence. That is authorization for me to discuss classified operations in this courtroom, Hayes said. Everyone present will be required to sign non-disclosure agreements, or I can clear the courtroom and speak to you privately. That won't be necessary, Brennan said weakly. Please, General, take the witness stand. Hayes walked to the witness stand but remained standing. I prefer to stand when discussing Major Rodriguez's service, Your Honor. She's earned that respect. He looked directly at Kate, who was still standing at attention, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. Your Honor, Hayes began, his voice filling the courtroom. Major Catherine Rodriguez is not, and never was, a supply officer. That designation was a cover for her real position as commander of Task Force Phantom, the most classified direct action unit in the United States military. Gasps echoed through the gallery. Alina's hand flew to her mouth. Hayes continued. For 15 years, Major Rodriguez led operations that don't exist in any public record. Operations that saved thousands of American lives. Operations that prevented 3 nuclear weapons from reaching American soil. Operations that eliminated threats to this nation before the public ever knew they existed. Judge Brennan had gone pale, but her records say Supply Corps. Cover story, Hayes said bluntly. Every member of Task Force Phantom had a fake military occupation. Rodriguez chose supply officer because it was boring. No one asks questions about supply officers. No one suspects them of being the deadliest operators in the American military. The general pulled out a tablet, showing an image to the judge. This is from helmet cam footage in Kandahar, 2018. That's Major Rodriguez leading an assault team to rescue a captured CIA station chief. 17 enemy KIA, 0 American casualties. The operation never happened officially. He swiped to another image. Syria, 2019. Rodriguez and her team intercepted a chemical weapons shipment headed for use against American forces. 40 enemy combatants engaged. Rodriguez personally eliminated 12 while wounded. Wounded, Brennan asked weakly. 3 gunshot wounds to the torso, Hayes replied. She continued fighting for 40 minutes until the mission was complete. The scars are still visible. Would you like her to show them to you, Your Honor? Brennan shook his head quickly. Hayes wasn't done. The Purple Heart you mocked? She earned it in Pakistan when she threw herself on an IED to save her team. The explosion broke 6 ribs, punctured a lung, and left shrapnel in her spine that causes constant pain. Pain she never mentions because that's not what warriors do. Kate stood frozen, tears now flowing freely down her face. Alina was sobbing behind her. The Bronze Stars? Hayes continued relentlessly. One for holding a bridge in Iraq against 50 insurgents with just 3 team members. One for a classified operation in Yemen where she saved an entire village from massacre. One for extracting an American ambassador from a coup in Africa. Should I continue? No, Brennan whispered. Please, General, I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. Hayes's voice rose to a roar. Because people like Major Rodriguez do their jobs in the shadows. They don't get parades. They don't get public recognition. They disappear into the night, do impossible things, and then come back to a country where judges mock them for being supply officers. The courtroom was silent, except for Alina's quiet sobs. Hayes pulled out another document. This is a letter from the President of the United States, written personally to Major Rodriguez. Would you like me to read it, Your Honor? Brennan shook his head, his face burning with shame. The PTSD you found so amusing. Hayes's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Major Rodriguez has lost 43 teammates over her career. She's held dying friends in her arms on 6 continents. She's been tortured by enemies who don't officially exist. She's made decisions that saved cities but cost her soul. And she's never asked for anything except fair treatment from the VA. The courtroom remained frozen as General Hayes stepped down from the witness stand and walked back to Kate. She hadn't moved, still standing at attention, tears streaming down her weathered face. At ease, Major, Hayes said softly. You don't have to stand at attention anymore, not for anyone. Kate's shoulders sagged slightly, the weight of years suddenly visible. Hayes turned back to Judge Brennan, who looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Your Honor, Hayes continued, his voice now controlled but still sharp as a blade. Would you like to know why I'm really here? Why the chairman of the Joint Chiefs flew from Washington to a small courthouse in Colorado? Brennan nodded mutely. 6 months ago, my son was deployed in Somalia, routine peacekeeping mission, except it wasn't routine. His convoy was ambushed by al-Shabaab fighters, 60 hostiles, heavy weapons, no backup available. Hayes paused, his own voice catching slightly. My son and his 12-man squad should have died that day. He looked at Kate. They didn't die because Task Force Phantom was shadowing them, because Major Rodriguez violated direct orders to stand down and led her team into that ambush. She lost 3 operators, saving my son and his squad. 3 of her own people, to save 13 regular Army soldiers who weren't even supposed to be in danger. Alina gasped from the gallery. This was news even to her. The families of those 3 operators received folded flags and lies about training accidents, Hayes said bitterly. Major Rodriguez wrote each eulogy personally, attended each funeral, and told each widow that their husband died in a training exercise. She carried their real stories alone because that's what leaders do in the Black Ops world. David Park, Kate's lawyer, finally found his voice. General Hayes, are you saying my client has been systematically denied recognition for her actual service? I'm saying your client officially doesn't exist, Counselor, Hayes replied. The real Catherine Rodriguez died on paper 15 years ago when she joined Phantom. Everything since then has been legend and ghost stories, until today. Judge Brennan cleared his throat nervously. General, I deeply apologize for my earlier comments. I had no idea. Your ignorance is not an excuse, Your Honor, Hayes cut him off. But it's also not entirely your fault. The system is designed to hide people like Rodriguez. The problem is what happens when they come home broken. Hayes pulled out one more document. This is Major Rodriguez's real medical file, classified until 30 minutes ago when the Secretary of Defense declassified it for this hearing. 17 combat injuries, traumatic brain injury from 4 separate IED explosions, shrapnel still embedded in her spine, liver, and left lung, nerve damage in both hands from torture in Afghanistan. Shall I continue? No, Brennan said quickly. No, that's enough. Is it? Hayes asked. Because I haven't even gotten to the psychological trauma. The nights she wakes up screaming in languages that aren't supposed to exist. The faces of enemies she eliminated to protect this country. The weight of secrets that would terrify most Americans if they knew. Kate finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. General, please, you don't have to. Yes, I do, Major, Hayes said firmly. Because if I don't, who will? You've been silent for too long, hidden for too long. He turned back to the judge. Do you know what she's been doing since her medical discharge? Working night shifts at a warehouse loading trucks. A woman who speaks 8 languages, who has a master's degree in international relations, who has briefed presidents. Loading trucks because her real resume doesn't exist and her body is too broken for anything else. Elena stood up in the gallery. Mom, she said, her voice broken, is this all true? Kate turned to look at her daughter, and for the first time, Elena saw her mother clearly. Not the quiet woman who made breakfast and helped with homework, but a warrior carrying invisible wounds. I'm sorry, baby, Kate whispered. I couldn't tell you, I couldn't tell anyone. Judge Brennan removed his glasses, wiping his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was completely different, humble, ashamed. Major Rodriguez, I owe you an apology that words cannot adequately express. My behavior today was inexcusable. I mocked your service, dismissed your sacrifice, and insulted your honor. There is no excuse for my conduct. He stood up, something judges rarely did in their own courtroom. If you'll permit me, he walked down from the bench, approaching Kate directly. Then, to everyone's shock, Judge Harold Brennan, who had never served a day in his life, attempted his best salute. It was awkward, unpracticed, but sincere. Kate returned it properly, then offered her hand. We all serve in different ways, Your Honor. Brennan shook her hand, his own trembling. No, Major, some serve, some sacrifice, and some, like me, just talk. I've been talking from this bench for 20 years, judging people whose shoes I'm not worthy to shine. He returned to his bench, his entire demeanor transformed. I'm revering the VA's decision immediately. Major Rodriguez is entitled to full disability benefits, backdated to her discharge date. Furthermore, I'm recommending a formal review of all denied claims from classified operators. Your Honor, Colonel Mitchell spoke up. The Department of Defense has authorized a special compensation package for Major Rodriguez, separate from VA benefits. It's the least we can do for someone who gave everything and asked for nothing. Kate swayed on her feet. General Hayes steadied her with a hand on her arm. Easy, Major, war's over for you. Time to let others carry the load. I don't know how to do that, sir, Kate admitted. You learn, Hayes said gently. That's your new mission, learning to live without the weight of the world on your shoulders. Elena pushed through the bar separating the gallery from the court floor, wrapping her arms around her mother. Mom, I'm so proud of you. I'm so sorry for all the times I complained about you being tired or distant. I didn't know. I couldn't know. Kate held her daughter tightly, finally allowing herself to truly break down. 22 years of military bearing crumbled as she sobbed into Elena's shoulder. 3 weeks later, Kate sat in her small apartment, still adjusting to her new reality. The VA benefits had been approved in record time. The special compensation from the DoD meant she could quit her warehouse job. But more importantly, she could finally begin to heal. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Judge Brennan standing in her hallway, holding a box of documents. Your Honor, Kate said, surprised. What are you doing here? May I come in, Major? I have something for you. Kate stepped aside, letting him enter. Brennan looked different outside his robes, smaller, more human. I've been doing some research, he said, setting the box on her coffee table. About Task Force Phantom, about Black Operations veterans, about the invisible wounds of classified service. He opened the box, revealing hundreds of documents. I've found 17 other cases in my district alone. Veterans like you denied benefits because their real service records don't exist. Kate picked up one file, scanning it. This is Captain Marcus Webb. I knew him. Good operator. They have him listed as a cook. He killed himself last month, Brennan said quietly. Couldn't get mental health treatment because his PTSD didn't make sense for a cook who never left base. Kate closed the file, her jaw tight. There are hundreds of us out there, Your Honor, maybe thousands, living with wounds we can't explain, trauma we can't discuss, service we can't prove. Which is why I'm proposing something, Brennan said. He pulled out an official-looking document. I'm establishing a special veterans court specifically for classified operators. General Hayes has agreed to provide verification services. The VA has agreed to expedited reviews. We're calling it the Shadow Warriors Initiative. Kate's eyes widened. You're doing this. It's the least I can do after how I treated you, after how the system has treated all of you. Brennan paused. I'm also resigning from the regular bench. I want to dedicate my remaining years to this, to making sure no one else goes through what you did. Before Kate could respond, her phone buzzed. It was General Hayes. Turn on the news, he said simply. Kate grabbed her remote, flipping to a news channel. On the screen was a breaking news banner. President awards Medal of Honor to classified operator. The presenter was speaking. In an unprecedented move, the president has posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor to 3 members of what sources are calling Task Force Phantom, killed in Somalia while saving 13 American soldiers. While their names remain classified, their sacrifice has finally been recognized. Kate sank onto her couch. He did it. Hayes actually did it. There's more, Brennan said, pointing to the TV. The scene had shifted to the White House press room. General Hayes stood at the podium. For too long, Hayes was saying, this nation has asked its most elite warriors to serve in silence, suffer in silence, and too often die in silence. Today, that changes. The Department of Defense is establishing a new protocol for recognizing classified service members while maintaining operational security. A reporter raised her hand. General, can you tell us anything about the operator who led the Somalia mission? Hayes looked directly at the camera. I can tell you that she's watching this right now, and I can tell you that this nation owes her a debt it can never repay, but we're going to try. Kate's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Major Rodriguez? The voice was familiar but impossible. This is the president. I wanted to call personally to thank you for your service and to inform you that I'm appointing you to lead a new advisory committee on veteran affairs for classified operators. Kate couldn't speak. The president continued. You'll work directly with General Hayes and Judge Brennan. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to ensure no shadow warrior ever falls through the cracks again. Sir, Kate finally managed. I'm honored, but I'm not sure I'm the right person. Major, you're the only person. You've lived it. You've survived it. And now you're going to help others do the same. The nation needs you one more time. Will you answer the call? Kate looked at Alina, who had just come home from school. Her daughter nodded, pride shining in her eyes. Yes, Mr. President, I'll serve. 6 months later, Kate stood in a conference room in the Pentagon, briefing a room full of generals, senators, and VA officials. The Shadow Warriors Initiative had already helped 300 classified operators receive proper benefits. Support groups had been established with the highest security clearances. A memorial wall had been created in a classified section of Arlington, where the real names and deeds of fallen shadow warriors could finally be recorded. Judge Brennan sat to her right, taking notes as she spoke. He had become her strongest advocate, using his legal expertise to cut through red tape that had trapped veterans for decades. The system is working, Kate reported. But we have more to do. There are operators from the Cold War still living with unrecognized wounds. Vietnam-era classified service members dying in poverty. We need to expand the program. Major Rodriguez, one senator interrupted. This program is expensive. How do we justify the cost to taxpayers? Kate fixed him with a stare that had once made terrorists confess. Senator, these operators saved New York from a dirty bomb in 2015. They prevented a biological attack on Los Angeles in 2017. They've stopped 17 major terrorist attacks that the public will never know about. How do you put a price on that? The senator looked away, nodding. You're right, whatever you need. After the briefing, Kate walked through Arlington Cemetery with Alina. They stopped at a section most visitors never saw, protected by subtle security. 3 new headstones stood there, finally bearing the true names of the operators who died in Somalia. Marcus Thompson, David Kim, Sarah Mitchell, Alina read. Heroes of Task Force Phantom. They were more than heroes, Kate said softly. They were family. Alina took her mother's hand. Mom, I want to serve too. After college, I want to be like you. Kate turned to her daughter, seeing her own determination reflected in those young eyes. The world needs all kinds of service, Mija. But whatever you choose, serve with honor, serve with courage, and never forget those who serve in the shadows. As they walked away, Kate's phone buzzed with a message from General Hayes. New situation developing. Need phantom expertise. Advise only, no field work. Interested. Kate smiled, typing back. Send the briefing. Phantom 6 still watches. Some warriors never truly retire. They just find new ways to protect those who need it most. And sometimes, the greatest service comes not from the battles we fight, but from the warriors we lift up when they finally come home. In his chambers that night, Judge Harold Brennan kept a photo on his desk, Kate Rodriguez in her dress uniform, finally wearing her real medals, standing between him and General Hayes. Below it, he had written, "The day I learned what real strength looks like." He had laughed at her service record. Now, he dedicated his life to serving those who served in silence. The Shadow Warriors finally had their voice, and Kate Rodriguez, who had spent 22 years as a ghost, finally stood in the light.